Well, welcome into the Week 16 recap, Dad. This is our penultimate, second to last video for the recaps. We're not going to recap Week 18 and really Week 17. The fantasy championship's over, so it's more going to be a quick look ahead to 2024. Way too early look ahead, but Week 16 is in the books. It's Tuesday, the day after Christmas. Dad, when is the correct time to take down your Christmas tree, and when is it too late? Like, you've gone too far, it should be down by now.
Too late would be I don't know. Some people want it up for, well, first off, let's make it a two-part question. Outdoor lights and stuff like that, they can stay out till right around January 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Christmas tree should be down sometime between Christmas and New Year's.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Yep.
But see, if you had a live tree, they don't last as long. So, and you get a little bit of a fire hazard, or the tree dries out, or most people a lot of people have, the fake trees, so they keep them up. So,
yeah, I'd say for both the lights and the tree, if I see lights in a tree up and it's past the first week of January, that's when I start being like, I don't know. Before that, I'm whatever about it. If you want to keep it up for New Year's and take it down after New Year's, that's fine. So, always an interesting topic. But you're here for the fantasy stuff, so we'll get into it again. Not a whole lot to talk about with a lot of these games. If you're listening to this, and things like that. I think we broke up there for a second, but we're back.
Yeah, you had a little bit of a delay.
That's all right. We're going to jump into the first game here, the Bengals Steelers game. Kind of a shock, I'd say. I mean, in terms of how it played out, the Steelers took care of business. They beat the Bengals pretty badly. I guess my big question here, Dad, is it done for Jake Browning in terms of if you're streaming quarterbacks and you made it all the way to the championship, choosing different quarterbacks, which a lot of people did because a lot of injuries, are you kind of out on Jake Browning, who plays the Chiefs next week? You're going to find another option?
If there is other options, I happen to have a team that's going to play next week, and I actually talked about this with you, that I have Flacco, so I played Jake Browning over Flacco and didn't do so well. So next week, even though I'm behind going into next week, I think I'm gonna just play Flacco and see what happens. So, but Browning, what has he played? He's been playing over a month, 4 or 5 weeks, and he's only had one, I don't know if you want to call it a bad game. Yeah, I don't know, 3 interceptions, and it wasn't great. So,
yeah, it wasn't absolutely destroying. Like in 4-point per passing touchdown, he still got you 16.4. Some people play only like -1 interceptions, so he threw 3 interceptions, so -3 points, but that's not terrible. I mean, he still got, according to Fantasy Pros, which I think is 4 points per passing touchdown and maybe -1 for interception, he got you over 16 points. So that's fine. But yeah, it's always a worry with these guys. I think guys like Flacco are a little bit more, we've seen Flacco do it for an entire career. Browning, they're getting tape on him. Usually backup quarterbacks, it's right around this 3rd, 4th game played where teams start to figure them out a little bit. Think of like a Josh Dobbs there.
I think missing Jamar Chase was kind of a big deal, and their running game didn't seem to be as effective, as a team. So I think that all equates, and that's a lot of pressure on on a backup quarterback, versus the best pass rusher in the NFL. So,
Yep. So I don't know if Jason's going to be back. I don't know if they have a whole – I mean, they're in the playoff race, but they're pretty far down there. So everyone's in the playoff race except for a few teams. So we'll see on that. I mean, mix in a dud game. Again, it's tough. They're going to play the Chiefs next week. I don't think the Chiefs are necessarily going to blow them out because the Chiefs aren't blowing out anyone lately. But, in a closer game, you would hope Mixon gets more carries. But this is always the potential of it is that they're getting blown out. Mixon's not going to get a lot of touches. So you're probably still starting him for the most part. T. Higgins is a must start if Chase is there. So on the Steelers side, are you chasing the George Pickens? Only 6 targets, but 4 catches for almost 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. Are you chasing that next week if you have him, you're throwing him in there?
Well,
are you worried?
I don't know. If you think you're going to get something comparable, I doubt that's going to happen. It's, the Pittsburgh offense, though, did seem, Najee, I know we're talking about Pickens, but overall the Pittsburgh offense seemed a little better, So, I mean, you can look at their stats and things like that, and in their fantasy scores, they're not wonderful. Pickens got a long pass, 86 yards, so that inflates his numbers. So if you just take that away, he'd still have 1 touchdown and 100 yards. So that's not bad. That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're playing a different, you're playing the Chiefs, which are definitely a better defense in Kansas City. So it's tough to chase that. I mean, if he's just if you have a really good team, which you probably do, and he's kind of your flex in the 3 wide receiver league, and he's a cherry on top of things, so then that's fine. Najee, I think, is fine as a low end RB2, and Jaylen Warren, kind of, it's not happening this year. So he was good for a little while there, but they were never going to move on from Najee completely, which they showed. So do you think either of these teams make the playoffs? I think I'm just double checking. I think the Steelers are ahead of the Bengals. So it looks like the Steelers are the 9th seed. Bengals are the 10th seed. They are one of 4 teams that are with an 8-7 record. Do you think, without knowing the schedule, do you think either of these teams make the playoffs?
Geez, they're both just kind of marginal teams. They'd be, if we had the 16 games, they'd both probably end up 8-8 or something like that. But so I don't know. It's not knowing the other 2 teams off the top of my head. I think we seen last year with the 7th seed, those guys didn't do very well in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So
no, they didn't.
Yeah, so that's what, if they did make the playoffs, if one of them did, they're going to get, somebody's going to beat the crap out of them probably.
Yeah, the teams they're fighting it for is the Colts, who are in the 7th seed, the Texans, who are 8-7 as well, but have the tiebreaker, and then the Steelers, Bengals. So those 4 teams, maybe the Raiders, if a lot of those teams lose, or the Broncos are potentially still in it, but
I kind of
interesting
to
see.
Yeah, Colts seem to be a little more of a complete team, kind of.
Yeah,
slightly.
Getting blown out by Atlanta hurts, which we'll talk about soon. On to the next game, and that's the Bills Chargers. A lot closer than anyone would have expected. It came down to kind of the last drive possession. Again, we kind of talked about it. No one thought, even when the Chargers were winning, that they were going to win that game. But interesting here, we've had back-to-back games now where Josh Allen, he's thrown it less than 40 times combined in the last 2 games. 15 times last week, 21 times on Saturday. So they're not really – he's still going to walk into 25 fantasy points because he gives you rushing touchdowns and all of that. But they're not throwing it that much, which is good to see for the overall team. They need to be able to win. They need to be able to win without Josh Allen, So, obviously Allen, you're starting. James Cook, you're starting. He had a down game, but, didn't catch any passes. Still had 20 touches. Gabe Davis did Gabe Davis things. He's kind of George Pickens, maybe a little less consistent. We talked about it with me and Brian talked about it. If you look at his game log over the last 7 weeks or so, there's been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in the last 8 or 9 where Gabe Davis is basically giving you 0 points. So it's either 0 or it's this. That's what it is.
Yeah, I figured that out last year. So
yeah.
And it really hasn't changed. And it doesn't mean the guy's not capable or something like that. There's just something going on. And there is, and you just pointed out Josh Allen. He only threw 21 passes, but he's just a little there's been a little change in philosophy in the offense. They fired the offensive coordinator, and I couldn't believe we seen Leonard Fournette. I didn't even know he was on the Bills. So I'm like,
yeah, they signed him a while back, and he kind of had him on the practice squad for a while. So are you worried about Stephon Diggs? Since week 7, he hasn't had a 100-yard game since week 6. Since week 7, that's 9 games. He has 450 yards.
I'd be a little concerned because it's becoming a little more consistent now. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a change of the, like you just said, change of the offensive coordinator, or is there something wrong with Diggs, or something's going on. So it's something that, you expect Diggs almost to be a top 10 fantasy player. He was right in that 10, 12 when you drafted him. You expect him and guys like Devontae Adams to get you big points consistently every week, and they're laying big eggs.
Well, what's interesting is Diggs is wide receiver 11 on the year, but since week 7 he's wide receiver 37. So he's been really bad for 9 games now. He's had, in that 9-game stretch, he's had 3 good games, and then the rest have been pretty bad games. So
that's Diggs, right?
Yeah, Stephon Diggs. So I think you're still starting him if you made it this far, but it's just, I don't think he's on the team next year, to be honest. I think he's somewhere else.
They have to work out a contract and all that other crap, money and, whatever. It'll be interesting. I always like that time of year, I don't like seeing guys getting cut. I like seeing guys move around and see what that causes us, to anticipate and overthink and underestimate what the hell's really going to happen next year. But anyway, that's coming down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the Chargers side of things, there's not really much to talk about. This team, I think they play. I don't even know who they play next week. To be honest, they play the Broncos, a pretty good defense. There's just not much to talk about. There's really no must start. If Keenan Allen plays, I'll start him. I don't know if he is going. I don't know what the incentive is for him to play, but if he plays, I'll start him. That's basically, even Eckler. If you somehow made it to the fantasy championship with Eckler on your team, congratulations. I don't want to really start him unless I am forced to. How
about Gerald Everett? The last couple of weeks seems like he's done pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, he's in that range of tight ends where you hope you get the 5 catches to 50 yards. We talked about it almost to start the year when we were going over all the teams. So 5 for 55 is what you hope for, and he's been getting that 7 for 42. Maybe Josh Palmer, if no Keenan Allen, is a desperation flex, but there's not a whole lot here that we need to focus on. So they have currently the 6th pick, I believe, in the draft. So we'll see if that keeps going. Again, Broncos Chiefs the last 2 games, so good chance they lose out.
Kind of pisses me off. They got they got a tight end. You know, I've seen a couple mock drafts from reputable places. You know, not just Yahoo or any of those places, and they got that tight end out of Georgia. And they could have had a tight end this year. You know, the Chargers. But anyway, I don't want to get on that stuff.
Yeah, wouldn't hate it, but yeah, they could have had one this year. So, Browns, Texans is the next one. Browns are going to make the playoffs with Joe Flacco. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
10-5. They haven't clinched a spot yet, but again, the seventh seed they're 2 games up on the seventh seed with 2 games to go. Like, it'd have to be a lot of things had to go wrong. Flacco, well, he's the main focus here. Obviously, Amari Cooper went off, had over 260 yards, was it? 265 yards. They didn't have a kicker, so they were just going for it on 4th down, which led to a lot of that. Like, this team, the Texans made a little bit of a comeback, which brought Flacco and Cooper back in. They weren't going to give, like, he set the Browns single game record, which was held by Josh Gordon, and they were taking him out, and they weren't going to let him back in to get that. I was like, what are you doing? He needs like 11 more yards. Like, let him get it. So I'm glad he went back in. He won fantasy leagues. I faced him in one league, and it was just like, how do you 60 points in some leagues, 50 points in other ones. It's like, how do you beat that from Amari Cooper, who's had an underrated career? I know we've talked about him a lot. He's just one of those guys, like, he was paid a lot by the Cowboys. He was a high first-round pick. He's never been one of the best receivers, top 5 receivers in the league at one time, but he's definitely a number 1 receiver everywhere he goes. And, over 1,200 or 1,250 yards on the year. He's going to have over 10,000 yards in his career. He's like 500 yards away, I think. So, he'll get that. I don't know where he's going to be next year. I think he's going to be with the Browns, but just overall good player. But Flacco, I want to focus on him because he's been really good since coming in and taking over. He's had, he took over in week 13. And since then, he is the QB3 of that 4-game stretch.
Wow.
It's Jake Browning, Matthew Stafford, and Joe Flacco.
What I like is he's throwing interceptions in the games, but it's like they don't care. They're just saying, hey, let it rip.
Yep.
And we'll deal with. I think he had 3 interceptions last week, and he had 2 this just a couple days ago. So it's like, who gives a crap? Just get the ball down the field, and they're doing that.
I guess my big question is, how much confidence do you have in him next week, which is a Thursday game, so coming up in just 2 days. But he plays the Jets, and the Jets have shut down essentially every single quarterback they played this year. They are the best team against quarterbacks. They've only given up over 15 points 4 times this year. That was against Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen. So 3 of maybe the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL, and Russell Wilson, who had a good game. So, and a lot of that is on rushing. Hurts was because of his rushing. Russell Wilson was because of his rushing. Patrick Mahomes was because of his rushing. Josh Allen did it through the air, but he's the only quarterback that's put up a good game against them through the air. Are you worried about Flacco in week 17, starting him in your fantasy championship?
Yeah, based on those stats, I'd say, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm still going to go with him and see what happens. It's like boom or bust time.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a little scary. I mean, we don't know about the rankings and everything yet, but I don't know. It will be interesting to look at when me and Brian talk about it. But, the running backs I don't really want to start. Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford might be an okay play against the Jets. He's the only one. Got a touchdown, but 15 carries for 25 yards. It's just not doing much for me. And Njoku, you're obviously starting. So, Texan side of things, they really miss C.J. Stroud, obviously. But they kind of used 2 quarterbacks in this game, Case Keenum and Davis Mills, which was weird. Singletary was okay because he had 3 catches, but I don't know if Stroud comes back Are you okay with starting Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, and even Noah Brown as the wide receiver 2 for that team?
Yeah, Nico Collins. Yeah, I think somebody and Schultz. It seems this offense when Stroud is playing seems to be able to support two wide receivers. So they threw the ball a lot. I mean, there was it seemed like there was a lot of passing going on. So I don't know if they were behind in the game or they were trying to catch up or what. But it'd be nice to see Stroud back in there yeah, it's nice. It's nice to see a team turn around. Coach, quarterback, and just players that are producing. Not everybody doesn't need to be a doormat all the time. So
yeah, if Stroud's in there, I'm totally fine with like Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, and even Noah Brown. They play the Titans, which is a good matchup for receivers. So if we expect Stroud to come back to what he was, which I don't know, we'll see if he even comes back. I know that he said he was still sensitive to light a week after the concussion happened. So
that's not good. Yeah.
No. So they're going to obviously be cautious with him. So a lot of it depends. It's hard to talk about him without knowing if Stroud's going to play. So move on to the Commanders, Jets. Jets pull it out. They were dominating, let Washington back in. I wonder how good this team would be with Jacoby Brissett as they I think he's played 5 drives from last week and this week, and he has 5 touchdown drives. He's much better than we'll start with how I'm interested, because I think if you asked us a month ago, we were probably 60%, 65% how is going to be the starting quarterback for Washington. You look at it now, I'm kind of worried.
Yeah, he's going to hit a brick wall, it seems like,
Yeah. Yeah, what's his future, do you think? If you just look at his game log, basically from November 19th onward, so 5 games here, he's thrown, looks like 8 interceptions in those 5 games, only 2 touchdowns, only has over, hasn't thrown over 150 yards over the last 3 weeks. So do you think he's the quarterback? What percentage would you give it that he's the quarterback for Washington, who I think has a top 5 pick in the draft? They have the number 3 pick in the draft right now.
Yeah, I think it would be I think it'd be crazy, for the Commanders not to get in line for a quarterback, so it'd be ridiculous if Sam Howell, he's nice and everything else, and he could be your backup, and eventually he's gonna. And if you look who they played, he's just is he like Trevor Siemian, where he's okay, he's good, or and he can be okay one day or 1 week and lay a big egg the next. So that's kind of the category he's in.
Yep. I agree. I'll be interested. We don't know if Brissett or Howe starting. If it's Brissett, I'm totally fine starting McLaurin. If I made it to the championship with him, I think he'll be good. And that's basically it. Maybe Logan Thomas, if you want to take he's in that Everett dart throw tight end range where it's like, you want 4 or 5 catches and 50 yards and you hope for a touchdown. So, the running backs, if Robinson's back, they didn't put him on IR. So if he's back, I'm fine with starting him. If Chris Rodriguez Jr. is the one, even though he got hurt, I'm fine with starting him because I think they're going to run the ball quite a lot. Now, they do play the 49ers, so maybe not now that I think about that. Antonio Gibson's, if both those guys are out, is a decent flex because he can catch the ball. So we'll keep an eye on that. Jet side of things, Breece Hall was a monster. If you had Breece Hall and Amari Cooper, you won your week with maybe just those 2 guys.
Friggin' finally,
Yeah, 190 total yards, 12 catches on 16 targets, which was a lot of it came on that last drive that they had to get into field goal range, which is fine. So obviously Breece Hall, hopefully you didn't bench him. We always kind of say start your studs. Like Breece Hall is one of those. Do you think just off the top of your head, obviously McCaffrey's RB1 next year. Like, where's Breece Hall? Top 5 running back next year?
Yeah, it seems like it's been a rough year, but off the top of my head, I got to think he's got to be top 5, and the Jets got a offensive line. You look at Trevor Siemian, he threw 49 passes.
Yeah.
And Breece Hall carried 20 times. They must have ran a lot of plays. They must have, offensively 30 points. There was a lot of offense in this game, So you can just tell that the number of targets. Garrett Wilson had 15 targets, and so they were slinging the ball around a little bit.
It was Washington making it a game in the fourth quarter, which is what led to, if you look at the Jets, they had 16 plays their last 2 drives combined. So, and Washington made it a game, so they had to do that. So, yeah, I think Breece Hall's up there. I think he's a top 5 guy. If you just look at the top 10 right now, it's that in fantasy finishers, it's McCaffrey, Mostert. Are we going to trust Mostert? We're not going to draft him.
Hell no.
Even Rashad White, like, I don't think he's going to be a top 5 running back next year. Like, he's a good player. Maybe round 2, but Travis Etienne, maybe. Kyron Williams, maybe. We'll see how high. I don't know if he'll be top 5. Derrick Henry's going to be out. Gibbs is a possibility. Jahmyr Gibbs. Breece Hall's RB8 this year. Joe Mixon, I don't think is going to be there. James Cook, maybe. So there's going to be
David Montgomery.
Yeah, there's a lot of turnover. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's a top 5 guy. So you're obviously starting him and Garrett Wilson, who didn't have a huge game, but he did what he did. I thought I heard that he's actually on pace to have more yards than he had last year, which I don't think a lot of people would guess that. He has 958, so he's about 150 yards away from breaking last year. So he should get close to that. But yeah, those 2 guys must starts. So we'll get into the next game, the Seahawks at the Titans here. This was a close game as well. Seahawks pull it out. So they're in the, I believe in the, they're in the 7th seed right now. So they're looking pretty good to make the playoffs if they continue to win out, and they have a pretty favorable schedule. Geno, I think, is back into that. If he's on waivers, I definitely start him over guys like Flacco, Browning, if he's out there somehow. I don't think he is, but he's a fine low-end QB1 now that he seems to be healthy. Kenneth Walker had 16 carries. Are you just rolling him back out there? Bad game, but you can't pass up on 16 carries.
Yeah, you can't. So I mean, and he had 54 yards, and 24 of those, almost half of those yards were in 1 carry. So he wasn't doing too well. The Titans, I think the Titans are have a good run defense.
They do. Yeah, they do. It was a little suspect lately, but they do have a good one, and they get the Steelers, so we'll see. I think he's basically a start. Lockett, JSN, Metcalf, like all those guys. Metcalf is the one you're going to want to start the most. He did catch a touchdown. It's interesting, and I'm just double checking this. JSN has more, I think, catches than DK Metcalf, which again, I don't think a lot of people would. They have he has one less catch than DK Metcalf. 60 for Metcalf, 59 for JSN. I think all 3 of them, like Metcalf is a start. I think Lockett's like a wide receiver 3. And I think JSN's a potential like flex in a wide receiver 3 league. So he's been coming on lately, and he's a good player, so he can always have a big game, in my opinion. Titan side of things, the passing game's gonna suffer a bit. I mean, Chigakonkwo was the best. He caught a touchdown from Henry, Derrick Henry, who had a bounce back game, 19 for 88 and a touchdown rush, a catch, and a passing touchdown. So Henry is obviously a starter if he's in there. Are you going away from DeAndre Hopkins, Dad, if you made it this far with Tannehill? If it's Levis, I'm fine with it. If it's Tannehill, you want to bench Lockett? Hopkins.
Yeah, I don't know. You're just, geez, man, that was a horrible. He was, he was barely doing, you know, he was barely doing anything, kind of, and even playing with Levis and stuff like that. Even though he was getting more targets, I think, and I think DeAndre Hopkins, he's a guy you need to throw. He needs the ball a lot. Mm-hmm. So, and that's the kind of player he is and stuff like that. It's kind of too bad that that he didn't get more looks. And I think if, like you said, if Tannehill's playing, then I think we're sitting him down. And
yeah, no, I get what you mean. He wasn't even really like he started to get into must start because he had like 3 good games out of 4, but then before that he wasn't really a must start. So I get what you mean there. Real quick, just we'll talk about that next week. So yeah, it's Henry and really the only must start. Chigakonkwo's, again, he's in that Everett range, that Logan Thomas range of you hope for a touchdown, and he got it this week. So Colts Falcons is the next one. We talked about it. Colts were looking good there for a while. They are in a playoff spot right now, but Texans are right there, Steelers are right there, Bengals are right there. If they had won this game, which they probably should have, I don't know, they got kind of blown out. Minshew was not great. Jonathan Taylor came back, had 18 carries and a touchdown. You're starting him. And that's like, if Pittman's out there, you're starting him, but that's it. It's Jonathan Taylor and Pittman, and that's really it for these two teams. So yeah, they play the Raiders and Texans with potentially CJ Stroud back. They definitely have to win one of those, but
yeah, they could win out. They could.
They could. I mean, we just saw the Raiders have been looking good lately. Texans with CJ Stroud's a different ball game, so I don't know. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see if they make it. And then the Falcons, if you got eliminated because Bijan had negative 0.1 points in half PPR, it kind of sucks to see him go for 122 total yards with 7 catches. It's like, where was that last week? But obviously, I that's why we kind of said I think you got to start Bijan no matter what. And then that's kind of it again. Like, is Arthur Smith the coach of this team next year, Dad? Yes or no?
Nah, he should be.
He should.
I think so. I don't. I got to give these guys a few years. I mean, seriously, Atlanta hasn't had a quarterback. I mean, they were at the end of Matt Ryan's career. Then we gone into Desmond Ridder and Heineke and I can't even remember last year or something, but it's just
Ridder and someone else I can't remember either.
Yeah, it was an old. Yeah,
Mariota.
Yeah, Mariota. You're not going to win, So they need a quarterback. Whether they're going to get it or not, I don't know. See, if they continue to be, one of these middle of the road teams, the 9-8 or the the 8-7 or whatever, or whatever their record is, middle of the road, then they're not going to get in position to draft or. But I think they got a better team than we think. It's not all coming together.
Yeah, my only problem is, you see what the Browns are doing and Stefanski's doing with P.J. Walker and Dorian Thompson-Robinson and now Joe Flacco, and they're staying competitive. You see what the Colts are doing with Gardner Minshew and staying competitive. I know there's only a game apart between those teams, but you just see other situations with backup quarterbacks, the Bengals staying relevant, and I don't know. It's a little frustrating. This is his 3rd year as the coach. He's had 7 wins 2021, 7 wins 2022. He's 7-8 this year. Obviously, 2 more games to go. Get the Bears and the Saints. They could win their division still. It's just, I don't know. It's to me, it's he was the offense coordinator of the Titans when they were really good. But how hard is it to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry and do a play action pass to AJ Brown? Like how creative do you really have to get when you have those two guys? So it's just I'd like to see these guys a little bit more creative. But in terms of fantasy, it's Bijan, and he's kind of the only must start. I don't want to really start anyone else on that team. So, we'll move on to the Packers. Panthers made it interesting. They should have. I wish they had a chance. They ran out of time on that final drive. Wish they would have had a chance to do something. But on the Packers side of things, again, I think Love looking good. Like he started off well, had a little bit of a bad stretch there, and then he's kind of turned it around. So he has almost 3,600 yards passing, 27 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. So you expect him to get close to 4,000 yards or over 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. That's a good year for your first year as a starter, for sure. Aaron Jones, we talked about it, me and Brian. He could be like if you made it all this way without Aaron Jones, basically the whole year, and now you're plugging him into your lineup, like he could be a league winner for you. 21 carries, 127 yards. So he's awesome. Romeo Doubs, are you interested in him? If Watson's out, Jaden Reed was out, Dontavian Wicks left this game. So are you interested in Romeo Doubs if he's kind of the only healthy guy there?
Well, yeah, and that just like you said, if those other guys are not playing, then we know Watson gets a lot of looks, and Jaden Reed is getting some looks. So, so Dobbs caught 4 passes. So, I mean, that's not great, but it's something you should look at possibly, for this coming week.
Yeah, for sure, especially if those guys are out. It's funny because, like, he's on every waiver wire list every week. He's under the 50% threshold. Like, he's not even rostered in 50% of ESPN leagues, which is crazy because he's wide receiver 36 on the year, I believe. Wide receiver 36 on the year. He's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bad games, and then the rest of the games have been really good. Good. Not a huge ceiling, but yeah, it feels like people don't want to like him, but he's solid. He's solid. He has 8 touchdowns this year, which is a big part of it. So that has to be near the top. But yeah, Aaron Jones is a must start, and that's kind of it for the Packers. I mean, Jordan Love, low end QB1. Panthers, I thought Bryce Young showed some stuff here. 312 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. He kind of moved around a little bit, had a couple runs there. Nothing major, but Chuba Hubbard, you're going to continue to start. Miles Sanders is maybe one of the biggest busts this year. That's amazing. Adam Thielen, if you threw him in there as a wide receiver 3, he got you 6 for 94. So he's going to finish the year probably with 1,000 yards. Let's see. I would assume he's at 964. So yeah, he'll finish the year with 1,000 yards. Any interest in DJ Shark? 6 for 98, 2 touchdowns, or you can't trust it? Yeah.
No, I can't trust that. So
yeah, I agree. It's really only Chuba Hubbard and probably Adam Thielen still is like a wide receiver 3 for the most part. So I'll be interested to see how Bryce. They need to get him. They're gonna overpay a receiver for sure. Whether it's Higgins, Ayuk, Michael Pittman, one of those guys.
Tyler Lockett.
All these guys are good receivers, but they're going to overpay someone, or they need to surround Bryce with some weapons to see what they got with him. So
get a damn running game.
Yeah, for sure.
Which will help.
Yep. A lot of things. Like, his receivers aren't getting open. Like, your best receiver should not be Adam Thielen at 33 years old or whatever he is, He should be your wide receiver 3. The Lions-Vikings. Lions win the division for the first time since 93, first time winning the NFC North. So congratulations there, Dad. They have a chance for the 1 seed with 49ers losing. They need the 49ers to lose again in order to get it. And they play the Commanders and Rams. So don't know if it's going to happen, but they're there. They're right there. They got a big game this week. It's Monday Night Football on Saturday. Dad, just quick, how excited were you for them to be?
Oh, yeah. You know, it was almost brought tears to my eyes, you know. It's just, you know, the whole Lions fan base, and, you know, they've traveled well with the team. You know, Ford Field is, you know, a destination now and stuff like that. Man, they went through some lousy years. Let's just let you know, in those 30 years, they haven't sucked every year. Let's just say that, but there's something different this year. Okay. So just watch the team, you know, and you can see games they used to lose, they're winning. So, you know, they're not making too many dumbass mistakes and things like that. And, you know, they got so many guys in the receiving core, you know, and we know it's St. Brown. He's leading the way in Laporta, but there's Josh Reynolds, there's Khalif Raymond, there's Jamison Williams. So it's all good. You know, we got two of the top running backs in the NFL, and they're feeding them. You know, they're playing them at the the right circumstance, and, you know, everything looks good. Goff, as long as he's not throwing too many interceptions or something, you know, it all looks good.
Yeah. Yep. And they, they're doing the right steps. You know, Dan Campbell takes over in 2021. They were a bad team, obviously, 3-13 and 1. Last year, they make the improvements, playing meaningful games in December, knock out the Packers. This year, they win their division. They're going to win at least 11 games, probably 12 or 13. So are they Super Bowl contenders? Yeah. I mean, they're going to be in the playoffs. They are. So they are. Would it be, you know, are you going to be disappointed if they make it to the NFC Championship game and lose? No. Like, these are their steps. They still got to add probably a couple more pieces to be that complete team, like, you know, that they want to be. But anything can happen in the playoffs for sure. And, you know, we've seen that. We saw the 49ers get whipped. So in terms of fantasy, you know, Goff is still a mid to low end QB1. So I mentioned this last week. They could be the first team ever. I was surprised by it, the first team ever to have 2,000-yard rushers and 1,000-yard receivers. So I think Montgomery needs 90 more yards for the rushing. Gibbs needs 130 over the last 2 games, which he can get easily. Not guaranteed, but pretty easily. And then St. Brown's already there. And they could, I don't think Sam Laporta is going to get to 1,000 yards now. He's had a couple down weeks for his standards. So he's at 775. So that'd be a pretty tough ask to get over 2 games. But that just shows how good their offense is. So, you know, Montgomery, it's not what it was at the beginning of the year where he's just dominating. They use Gibbs at the goal line, no problem. But Montgomery's still going to give you 15-plus touches, and he's going to be a good shot for a touchdown. Gibbs is awesome. St. Brown's awesome. And, you know, there's Laporta, he got you here. You're going to roll with him. Viking side of things, Nick Mullins, like, he's kind of like Flacco. He's throwing interceptions, but he's putting up 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. So,
yeah.
I continue to potentially start him as, like, you know, this Vikings offense they produce quarterbacks and having good weeks. So,
well, I read this morning before we did the podcast, you know, that the Vikings they're rethinking Nick Mullins versus Jared Allen. So pay attention to that this week. And, you know, 411 yards and 2 touchdowns those will satisfy you fantasy wise, but, you know, the 4 interceptions, you know, it doesn't do wonders for the team and stuff. So
nope. And they have Yeah, they were in control of their own destiny. Now they're not. So Jefferson's awesome. If anyone questions, like I know there was questions like, will he even come back? He wants a contract type of thing. There was a two play sequence there. One of them was a fumble, and he ran all the way back from running a route, recovered the fumble, and then that big catch he had where he basically sold out and got
he's
in the back. And,
yeah, he's very special. And if they do something stupid like franchise tag that guy, that just pisses guys like these guys have the diva attitudes and stuff like that. It becomes counterproductive. Pay the dude,
yeah,
friggin' pay him. And in this game, Addison got hurt.
Yeah, and
Hawkinson got hurt. I'm concerned about Hawkinson because it looked like he got hit low and stuff like that. So I don't know if it was a potential knee injury or something like that. They haven't made a big deal about it, but just something to pay attention. That kind of affected the game. You got 3 top flight receivers pretty much, and you just lost 2 of them in the middle of the game. So
yeah, Jefferson could still get 1,000 yards, which is crazy in 10 games. He's at 823, so he needs 180 over the last 2 weeks, and he'll do that in 10 games, which is pretty crazy. Yeah. Keep an eye on the Hawkinson and Addison. They both could miss. If that's the case, I don't mind KJ Osborne as a start this week as like a wide receiver 3 flex kind of guy. 5 catches, 95 yards, and a touchdown. So he's going to be not only Addison's out, but Hawkinson out is big for him. I don't know why they didn't run it as much. It was a close enough game. You look at the box score and you see 8 carries for Chandler, and you think, oh, Madison came back. He must have taken over. No, only 2 carries for Madison. So Chandler was still out there over 60% of the time. I'm fine with starting him again next week because they have a much better matchup against the Packers. So, and obviously Jefferson you're starting. So we'll keep cruising along here to the Jags and the Bucs. Kind of been talking about it all year long. The Jags just don't look right. Is it Lawrence? He's had a lot of injuries, but he's playing. And so you got to judge him on what you're seeing on the field, and it just doesn't look right. I don't know. Like, is it all his fault? No, but, he left the game again with an injury. We'll see if he plays. But at this point, it's avoid him. This team's tied with Houston and the Colts for the division, which is pretty crazy because people are talking about the Jags as a top 3 offense. Are they rivaling the Chiefs in the AFC type of thing? And so they get the Panthers and Titans to end their season, which is good for them. But I don't know. It's ETN. He's been really bad.
I think he got. The usage on him at the beginning of the year. They were giving the ball. He was getting a lot of touches in the running game, and I think he's a good running back and stuff like that. I'm not sure if he's a what they call it, the bell cow type dude. And and I don't know if he's worn out or these games. I mean, they got blown out, so I understand, they got to throw the ball to catch up and stuff like that. And they were down 20-0 at halftime, Jaguars. So it's like, you stink, guys.
Yeah. It's interesting with ETN because if you look at it, he is RB4 on the year in half PPR from weeks 1 to 8, which is before their bye. He was RB2, averaging 18.8 points. It was him and then McCaffrey, those 2 players. So since week 9, well, I'll say since week 10, which is after their bye up until this week, he is RB24, averaging 9 points, half the amount of points he was averaging to start the year. So I will say this, they had a lot of people pointed this out as a potential sell high on ETN. They had a really tough stretch there. After their bye, they had the 49ers, Titans, Texans, who are really good against the run as well. Bengals, Browns are really good. Ravens are really good, and Buccaneers. So all their matchups except for one were tough run defenses. So are you saying you're going to bench them if you're in the championship, or you're still going to roll out?
I have them, and I'm not going to bench them, but because really, I mean, it's hard. Running backs are hard to find.
And they get the Panthers.
I have him. I have ETN, and I have Rachaad White on the same team, so that kind of helps. So, who I benched in that team? Najee friggin' Harris. So
yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. They get the Panthers, who have been fourth most points to running back. So keep an eye on that. I mean, Evan Ingram is a must start. 10 catches, 15 targets. Like, that dude's been a really good tight end this year. Just looking at his numbers, he's at 98 catches. So that's amazing. Ridley, you're going to start because you can get these type of games, 6 for 90, 2 touchdowns. Bucs side of things, Baker Mayfield. I think he has to be back in Tampa Bay, I would say. Like, the dude's been playing really well lately. He's right there with Jordan Love numbers, 3,600 yards and 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. So he's been good. He's going to put up 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns and, maybe less than double-digit interceptions. So he's a fine start this week. I'd potentially start him over a guy like Patrick Mahomes, which is crazy to even think about. But that's something we'll talk about later. The Rachaad White, obviously, you're starting. Dude's been awesome. Mike Evans, you're starting. Godwin is probably back in the starting category now. 3 good games in a row in terms of target share. So anything on the Bucs, Ted?
No, I think you identified him. White's rushing totals were a little low, but he had 20 carries, so they kind of stuck. They kind of stuck with the running game, and we'll see. We'll see. It looks like Evans, Godwin, Trey Palmer, Rachaad White, all those guys got, a lot of targets. So,
yeah. White was kind of doing what he did to start the year. He's been a lot better rushing, but was kind of inefficient to start the year, 20 for 39, but then he would give you 6 catches for 40 yards, and then he got his touchdown. So, yeah, he's been awesome, kind of a revelation this year. So the next game we got is the Cardinals and the Bears. We'll talk about it next week with Kyler Murray and what the Cardinals do, but they currently have the number 2 pick in the draft. So the first and second, both these teams, first pick for the Bears, second pick for the Cardinals. They have 2 quarterbacks who are very high draft picks who have flashed but haven't maybe been as consistent as you want. It'll be very, very interesting if both these teams move on, if neither of them move on. I'm very curious. I think Kyler for fantasy is still fine. He threw for 230, 2 touchdowns. He gives you a rushing floor. So I'd still start him as like a QB1 low-end guy. James Conner has been really good as of late, the last 3 games. 45 yards on the ground, 67 through the air and a touchdown. You're starting him. Still starting Trey McBride, even though he had 6 for 31, which didn't kill you at all. And he has the capability of putting up more. So there's really no one else. It's Kyler, Connor, and McBride for me, and no pass catcher besides McBride on this team, unless you disagree with that, Dad.
No, not really. You called it. That's the same thing we said last week, I'm sure. Wash, rinse, repeat,
Yep. Agreed. Justin Fields on the other side, still starting him. He gives you almost 100 yards on the ground. That's just a super safe. He gave you 16 points rushing, essentially. So anything extra with passing is extra. That's what it is. So I thought Roschon was going to be a decent play. I actually started him in our league, which was a little bit deeper of a league, but and it was Khalil Herbert again. So they don't really have any rhyme or reason to who their running backs are. I guess it's Khalil Herbert, but Deontay Foreman was out due to personal issues. So if he's back, it just muddies the water. If Deontay Foreman's out, I'm fine with throwing in Khalil Herbert, 20 carries, 112 yards and a touchdown. Cole Kmet was awesome, 4 for 107. You're always starting him. DJ Moore left the game with an injury, came back. Doesn't seem like he was completely right. If he's starting, though, you're starting DJ Moore. So it's Fields, it's Moore, it's Kmet, and then I'm fine with Khalil Herbert if Dante Foreman's out for sure. So anything there, Dad? There's not a whole lot with this game. We'll talk about – this is more of a next week future of the team type of topic, I think. So move on?
Yeah.
Cowboys-Dolphins. No, you're fine. Cowboys-Dolphins wasn't the high-scoring game that everyone thought, 22-20. Dolphins pull it out. They have a chance for the number 1 seed, and they play the Ravens next week. That will be a fun game, hopefully. Although I think I heard there's been 10 or 12 games with, I think it's a over-under of 52 or more, and 11 of the 12 have been under. So it's just been kind of an under type of year. Dak was fine. I don't think it was his fault. He did his job at the end. He drove him down, gave him the lead. Defense couldn't hold up. 250 and 2 touchdowns for Dak. Not what he was during. It kind of sucks that his big stretch of games is right before the fantasy playoffs, and he's kind of been, mediocre in the fantasy playoffs, but that's just kind of how it goes. Is Tony Pollard maybe the biggest bust this year in terms of guys who, can't count the injury guys, and you can't count someone who was drafted in the 5th or 6th round. So in terms of guys who were drafted in the 1st or 2nd, Tony Pollard's up there, right? I mean, Eckler, but he was also injured, but not completely. So Tony Pollard's high on that list. He's RB14 on the year, but you're expecting potential top 5 guys. He one of the bigger busts this year, Dad?
Yeah, but we kind of called it, and I mean, we just said, hey, Tony Pollard's a nice back and everything else, and he doesn't seem to be. He needs to be sharing the load, in rushing and stuff like that. And the Cowboys, they didn't address it in our minds. We're not general managers or coaches or something like that, but it sure seemed, Tony Pollard worked out all right when Ezekiel Elliott was there. They moved on. They didn't get anybody to kind of replace those carries, it seems like. And so it is what it is. It's kind of what we called it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about it. And there's always cases of guys, it was basically – look, Tony Pollard was never the main guy, even in college, right? Was never carried the load and things like that. So we were kind of concerned, does that mean he can do it in the NFL? And it works out sometimes. Austin Eckler's a good example of a guy that could carry the load, but he also carried the load in college. He had 300 carries in 1 year in college, over 200 3 straight years and stuff like that. So, yeah, he's been a disappointment. I think it would shock you, Dad. Do you know he had 52 catches on the year, Tony Pollard?
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me, I guess. So
it surprises me a little bit. I just don't think they were in terms of just, you'd think his numbers would be higher. He only has 295 yards on those 52 catches, which is pretty low. But yeah, I mean, he's on pace for almost 60 catches this year, which is a good number. But
that is.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're probably still going to be starting him for the most part, unless you have a bunch of guys ranked higher. Dak, you're starting. Lamb, you're starting. Ferguson is in that Everett range, maybe a tick above those guys. So, Dolphins. Waddle sounds like he's potentially going to miss the rest of the year. I don't know. I think that's still questionable, but would you bench Tua next week, who plays the Ravens, really good against quarterbacks, without Waddle? I'd play guys like Baker Mayfield over him. Would you go that far?
Oh boy, that's I don't even know who is it Cedric Wilson is the guy who's gonna. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good thought. That good thought that cause for a little more investigation.
Sure.
Tua needs. Yeah, he needs all his. Tua needs his tools, and those are Waddle and Hill and all that.
Yeah, Ravens have been really good. They've only given up 15 or more points three times this year. One was to Josh Dobbs, who gave you eight of those points on the ground. Matthew Stafford was kind of the only player to have a big passing game on him. So, yeah, I'd be worried about Tua. So definitely something we'll talk about later on in the week. Mostert, you're always going to start. Tyreek, you're going to start. Achane, if you need a boom play, maybe, but he's just not getting enough touches. Who do you think wins that game, Baltimore and Miami?
Well, the way we seen the Ravens defense, that's what impressed me last night was the Ravens defense. And I thought they were okay. You know, I wouldn't call them great or anything, but they're good enough. And you know, I'd say the Ravens. You know.
Yeah, Ravens are at home too, and Dolphins are much better at home. So, yeah. And then Tyreek, you're obviously starting. So we'll move on. We got 4 more games. This one will be an easy one here. The Patriots, Broncos. Patriots win, which kind of sucks for the Broncos. It kind of had playoff. Did you see the playoff percentages? If they won, it was like 65% chance to make the playoffs. If they lost, it was like a 10% or something. It's kind of crazy.
I did see that, yeah, and
yeah.
You know, I know Broncos had a nice run and stuff like that. The Lions exposed them last week, and you know, and I don't know, man. There's just something missing with the Broncos. You know, I don't know what it is, or
I think this is how I think it's gonna go. They're gonna be drafting. If they miss the playoffs, they'll be what, in the teens or so. Right now they are 14th. So, but there's so much. There's like a bunch of teams that are either 7-8 or 8-7. Broncos are 7-8. I think they take Bo Nix out of Oregon in that middle of the draft. Let him sit for a year. Russell Wilson with his contract plays one more year, and then it's Bo Nix. And I think he kind of fits Sean Payton's accurate passer, dink and dunk type of offense. So,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure Javonte Williams is Sean Payton's type of running back.
I don't think so.
You know, even though, I like Javonte Williams. We know he's a 1,000-yard rusher, you know, and then he got hurt, and this year hasn't been great or anything else. I mean, he's played every damn game, and it doesn't look when they had their little run mid-season there, the Broncos, their running game was working pretty good.
Yeah.
You know, certainly didn't work yesterday or, you know, a couple days ago versus the Patriots. So,
yeah, it didn't. And it hasn't worked for Javonte. This is kind of the time of year where you expected him to kind of explode if he was going to, coming off that major injury. So, Patriots side of things, you're starting Zeke because he had 12 carries and 9 catches. And that's kind of it for the Patriots. It's like must starts in my opinion. Demario Douglas is a potential PPR start, you know, 5 for 74. He's potentially going to give you that. So Broncos side of things, you know, Russ is that low end QB1, kind of how he's been all year long. He's QB9 on the year, so gives you a nice floor. And yeah, I don't want to start the running backs if I can avoid it. Cortland Sutton missed basically the entire game, might be out. Don't want to start any pass catcher if Sutton's out. So easy game. We'll move on to the Raiders and the Chiefs. Kind of a shock. You know, Chiefs are free falling a bit. Like, man, they still haven't clinched the division this
good
of the year. So we're a playoff spot.
Mahomes is pissed off over there reaming his offensive line out, and it's like, okay, buddy,
yeah,
we'll block for you. Maybe not.
Yep, they only need to win one more game, and luckily they get the Chargers and the Bengals Chargers in that order. So they should win at least one of those, you would assume. We'll start with the Raiders. Did you know Aiden O'Connell didn't complete a pass Like I think his last completed pass was like either early in the second or late in the first quarter. He didn't complete a pass in the whole second half. So Devontae Adams sucked because of that. He had 62 yards passing, Aidan O'Connell. So I don't know. That's tough to see. I guess Devontae Adams, if you made it this far, you're probably still going to start. But Zamir White's a must start if Jacobs is out again. 22 for 145. If Jacobs is back, you're starting Jacobs. They're an easy team. The Chiefs. So I'm gonna do something here, and I want you to tell me. So the Chiefs play the Bengals, and I want you to tell me which quarterback stat you would start over Patrick Mahomes. So Jalen Hurts is an obvious yes, right?
Yes.
Josh Allen, pretty obvious. Dak, I think you're starting him over against Detroit. I'd start Dak over Mahomes.
Yeah, probably because he's at home and stuff like that. So they always seem to play better. Detroit's defensive backfield, it's okay. It's not great and stuff, but
Lamar, I'd start Lamar over.
Oh, absolutely.
I'd start Brock Purdy against Washington, who give up just a ridiculous amount of points to quarterbacks. I'd start him over Mahomes. Justin Fields. I'd start Justin Fields over Mahomes.
Yeah, I think so.
CJ Stroud?
No.
Against Tennessee? No? Okay. So that's the line. Would you start?
Yeah, I think so.
Two I went in against Baltimore. Jared Goff over Mahomes?
Yeah, I don't know. That's
stuff.
Maybe, that's a maybe. Stroud is a no. Goff might be a maybe. Mahomes had 53 yards rushing in this last game too.
Yep.
I mean, that's a lot. I mean, I don't know.
There's no one open, man.
Huh?
There's just no one open. Like he was running on every single play, looking for someone. Like it was crazy. He had 17.7 points. So
his two offensive tackles. I know one of them. They stink. They're not. He had Orlando Brown last year, and they let him go, and then they brought in two guys. One guy who lines up friggin' in the backfield the whole time, and I don't know. And then wide receiver. Sorry, it's not working, fellas. Kelsey, I think. I'm gonna say it. I've been kind of. I think Kelsey, and I know he's probably still tight end one, and he doesn't look like Kelsey of 2 years ago. And I know he had some injuries and Taylor Swift and all this other horse shit, but
I think it's more the injuries than anything, to be honest.
Yeah.
He's tight end 3 overall. He's tight end 1 in points per game. He missed a game, and Laporta's tight end 1. Hawkinson 2, Kelsey 3, but in points per game, it's Kelsey's still 1. But you didn't draft Kelsey just to be tight end 1. You drafted him to be tight end 1 and 5 points better per game than everyone else.
That's right.
He's only a point. He's half a point better than Laporta per game. About 0.7 more than Hawkinson. About a point more than Kittle. So he's even. Dalton Schultz less than a point per game on Dalton Schultz. So you didn't draft him for that. So I'm still starting him. The running backs, keep an eye on that because McKinnon's on IR. Pacheco had a concussion, and he can miss this game. Short week as well. They played on yesterday. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire to me is a start if there's no McKinnon and Pacheco. Could be all Clyde. I mean, they'll bring someone else up, but Clyde could be a sneaky championship week flex play that kind of brings it home. And then I still start Rashee Rice, 12 targets, 6 catches, 57 yards. He's been good as of late.
Definitely.
To me, he's a wide receiver too, though. They need a stud receiver. They're going to overpay for a Pittman or Higgins. Like Rashee Rice is the perfect wide receiver too, in my opinion. So, we'll move on to the Giants-Eagles. Giants made it interesting. Not so interesting from a fantasy point of view in terms of who you want to start. They brought in Tyrod Taylor. Saquon is always going to be a start. And that's kind of it. I mean, Waller, maybe he's in that range of tight ends. Maybe you want to start, but it's really just Saquon. So I don't know. Do you have anything you really want to talk about with the Giants?
No, there's nothing to say.
Yeah, I think they take a quarterback, and maybe Daniel Jones is the guy for another year. But I think it's very telling that Tommy DeVito won more games than Daniel Jones. So that kind of telling on how good Daniel Jones is.
He kind of came back to earth yesterday, though. I mean, Eagles are good defensively, okay defensively. So
yeah. So Eagles are
still is.
Go ahead.
Yeah, he still is an undrafted rookie free agent. So let's not forget that.
Well, we mentioned it with Browning. Like about 3-4 games in is when teams get tape on you and they figure things out. So Eagles are easy. Hurts is a start. Swift, you're starting. They're want to get him going. AJ Brown, you're starting. Devontae Smith, you're starting. Goddard, you're starting. So those guys are easy. We don't need to spend any time there. So to the dad, is this going to be the Super Bowl preview? Ravens 49ers? Did we see the Super Bowl matchup yesterday?
It could be. There's a handful of teams that that we think are going to be there, and Dolphins. We'll even throw the Cowboys and the Eagles and the Lions. But yeah, this is a preview.
Yeah, and
possible preview.
I mean, the chances both of them make it are low, but I mean, we saw Lamar Jackson. Maybe it's funny. I guess during the game, the MVP odds switched from Brock Purdy is the favorite to Lamar Jackson is the favorite, which just means people are betting on Lamar during the game, but seems to be him. I think Brock Purdy's MVP. It's out. You can't throw 4 interceptions on Christmas Day, primetime game, this late in the season in this matchup, and win MVP in my opinion. So it's McCaffrey or Lamar as of now. We'll see if it changes. Lamar, you're always starting. Gus Edwards found the end zone. He's a touchdown or bust kind of running back. Zay Flowers was really great. 9 for 72 and a touchdown. Likely looks good when he gets the ball in his hands. He's a good tight end. So those guys are starting. You can forget about Beckham. It was a thing there for like 2 weeks, but that's about it. Brock Purdy came back to earth a little bit. This is always the concern. Like, is it crazy to think, Dad, if they obviously they're going to make the playoffs and Brock Purdy has a game like this? I know there was about one of those that wasn't really on him, but the other 3 were. They were kind of weird. They were batted, but it was him making those throws and not the greatest throws. If he has a game like this in the playoffs and they lose in the divisional or NFC championship game, do you think it's crazy to think like they try and make a move for another quarterback?
Oh, hell no. I mean,
I don't think it is.
I don't, we know how the 49ers operate, but, I don't know. They always give up a lot of capital, man, to get players and draft picks and stuff like that. It's like, God, when's that party going to end? But that means that the guys they are drafting or the free agents they are signing or something like that, things are they're hitting, they're doing it well. So
I don't think it's crazy to think like if they
but
lose
they're probably going to lose.
Go ahead.
Probably going to lose Brandon Ayuk, unless they're going to pay him, if they got the cap space and, but so you got to replace that guy. I mean, look what he's done in his 4 years. So
yeah, I mean,
it's not easy to replace, and maybe Ronnie Bell or I don't know. They think he's going to do it. I don't. We'll see.
Yeah, that's off-season stuff for sure. But I don't think it's crazy if Brock Purdy looks terrible in a playoff game, divisional NFC championship round, that they pursue a Kirk Cousins who's a free agent or a Justin Fields to run this offense or something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's crazy.
Oh my God! If they got if they got Justin Fields, and to me that would be, that's what they were thinking when they drafted Trey Lance. That's what they wanted, and Kyle Shanahan would make Justin Fields look like an MVP, I think,
Oh, for sure. So I'm still fine if Purdy's healthy to throwing him back in there. Like I said, I'd start him over Mahomes, especially against Washington, who just give up so many points to quarterbacks. McCaffrey, obviously, you're starting. Kittle, you're starting. Ayuk, you're starting. Debo, you're starting. So all those guys, Debo had the down game this week, but he's been awesome the last few weeks. So all those guys can go off. So nothing much else to say. We did it. We kind of made it. That's kind of our main last recap before, again, next week's going to be more about what's the future. And any last words, Dad?
Yeah, not really. Just go Lions, man. They're a 6.5 point underdog. So we'll see.
You going to bet them? Brian's in
maybe. Brian's going to Laughlin and seems inviting.
Yeah. We will see. But yeah, that's it. We'll be back with the preview for week 17, and we'll be putting out some rookie dynasty content soon. So we'll catch you guys next time.